Hey, language adventurers! Welcome back to Tales for Talking. I'm your host, Professor Sarah, and today, oh boy, do I have a mind-bending story for you. Imagine waking up one morning and suddenly finding out that your native language, the one you've spoken since you were a baby, has completely vanished from your mind. Poof! Gone. Instead, your second language has taken over, becoming crystal clear and perfect. Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to Roberto, and trust me, this is just the beginning of his extraordinary journey. We're about to dive into a tale that will make you question everything you know about how our brains process language. It's a story about loss, discovery, and let's just say there's even a twist involving some unexpected visitors from very, very far away. Whether you're a language learner, a science enthusiast, or just someone who loves a good story that makes you go, "Wait, what?" You're in for a treat. And stick around after the story because we'll break down some fascinating language points and have an interactive session where you can test your comprehension while learning some pretty cool English expressions. So get comfortable. Maybe grab a cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive into Roberto's language adventure, a tale that proves that sometimes losing something might just be the beginning of finding something even more extraordinary. Here we go.
Roberto's language adventure. Roberto was a Spanish speaker who had been studying English for years. He worked hard to improve his skills, practicing every day. One sunny morning, Roberto was riding his bicycle when suddenly he hit a big rock. He fell and hit his head on the sidewalk. "Ouch!" he exclaimed in English, surprising himself. When he tried to speak Spanish to a passerby, he couldn't. The words wouldn't come out. Instead, he said in perfect English, "Excuse me, can you help me? I've had an accident." The person responded in Spanish, but Roberto couldn't understand a word. It sounded like a completely foreign language to him. At the hospital, the doctor examined Roberto and said, "It's a rare condition, but sometimes head injuries can affect language abilities in strange ways." Roberto was shocked. "But doctor, how will I communicate with my family and friends? They all speak Spanish." The doctor suggested, "You might need to learn Spanish again, Roberto. In the meantime, try using a translation app to communicate." So Roberto began his journey of relearning Spanish. He used Google Translate to talk to his worried mother. "Mom, don't worry. I'm okay," he typed in English, and the app translated it to Spanish. His mother replied in Spanish, and Roberto had to use the app to understand her words. "Oh, my son, this is so strange, but we'll get through this together." As days passed, Roberto started taking Spanish classes. Surprisingly, he found that he picked up the language quickly. It felt familiar, like he was remembering rather than learning. One day, while practicing Spanish, Roberto had a realization. He turned to his language tutor and said, "It's weird. When I learn new Spanish words, it feels like I'm remembering them, not learning them for the first time." His tutor smiled and replied, That's fascinating, Roberto. Your brain is probably accessing old memories of Spanish. Months went by, and Roberto became fluent in both English and Spanish again. But something unusual happened. He developed an uncanny ability to understand and learn new languages incredibly fast. One night, Roberto had a vivid dream. In it, he was communicating with beings from another planet. When he woke up, he was surprised to find that he could still understand their strange language. Excited, he told his friend, "You won't believe this, but I think I can communicate with extraterrestrials now." His friend laughed and said, "Roberto, you've always had a great imagination, but who knows? Maybe your unique brain is capable of amazing things now." Roberto grinned. He was happy with his recovered Spanish, his improved English, and his mysterious new ability. He looked forward to more language adventures in the future.
Welcome back to Tales for Talking. I'm your host, Professor Sarah, and today we're diving into the fascinating story of Roberto's language adventure. Let's break it down together and explore some interesting language points. First, let me ask you, have you ever experienced a situation where you couldn't express yourself in your native language? Take a moment to think about it. I'll wait. Now, let's explore some interesting parts of Roberto's story. When we read that Roberto hit his head, this is different from just touching his head. In English, when we use hit with body parts, it usually implies an accident or injury. What other verbs do you think we use with accidents? Maybe you thought of bump, bang, or knock. Excellent. In the story, we encounter the phrase rare condition. Rare means uncommon or unusual, while a condition in medical terms means a health problem or situation. Can you think of other ways to say something is unusual? Perhaps you thought of uncommon, exceptional, or extraordinary. Great thinking. Let's talk about that interesting phrase, picked up the language. When we say someone picks up a language, we don't mean they physically lift it. It means they learn it naturally and quite easily. What do you think is the difference between picking up a language and studying a language? You probably realized that picking up is more natural and effortless, while studying involves more conscious effort. Excellent observation. Here's an interesting expression from the story. Get through this together. This phrase shows support and unity during difficult times. How would you express this idea in your language? When Roberto says it feels like he's remembering rather than learning, this is a beautiful way to describe the difference between new knowledge and recovered knowledge. Have you ever had an experience where you remembered something you thought you had forgotten? How did it feel? Now, let's look at some vocabulary that might be new to you. 1. Passerby. A person who is walking past or near something. 2. Uncanny, strange, or mysterious in an unsettling way. 3. Vivid, as in vivid dream. Very clear, bright, or detailed. 4. Grinned, smiled broadly. Here's a fun activity. Try to use these words in your own sentences. Pause the podcast and give it a try. One of the most interesting themes in this story is how our brain processes language. Did you notice how Roberto's experience challenges what we know about language learning? What do you think about this? Before we wrap up today's episode, here's a thought-provoking question. If you suddenly could only speak your second language, like Roberto, what would be your biggest challenge? Think about it and maybe share your thoughts in the comments below. And that brings us to the end of today's analysis of Roberto's language adventure. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the story and learned something new, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Tales for Talking for more story analysis and language learning content. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to stay updated with our latest episodes. Remember, as we always say here at Tales for Talking, every story is a chance to learn, and every word is a new adventure. See you next time, language explorers. This is Professor Sarah, signing off.